But nonetheless, let's try and get back to our lesson here. We're going to go back to 2 Kings, chapter 5, verse 8. And it was so, when Elisha, the man of God, had heard that the king of Israel had rent his clothes again. This ain't like, this is way back in the day. This ain't like how it is today. You know, today you can go to Target or Walmart and say, let me get 4 or 5 pairs of them Levi's over there. Give me about 3 pairs of those Carhartts. I want one of those t-shirts over there. Give me a sweater over there. It wasn't like that back in the day. Nobody was tearing up clothes. That's a Jewish fable. They had to make and hand stitch those clothing back then. They wasn't actually ripping their clothes. When it's talking about clothes, it's talking about garments. Garments are doctrines. Garments are doctrines. So when you see it talking about renting clothes, it means the man that lost faith in his doctrine. Remember that the king of Syria sent his man with a letter saying, I need you to cure his leprosy. But the man don't know how to heal him. Just like Christ say, they ain't gonna know how to heal you because they don't know the doctrine. But Elisha know how to heal him. So let's read it again. And it was so, when Elisha, the man of God, had heard that the king of Israel had rent his clothes, he had lost faith in his own doctrine, which was carnal, that he sent to the king, saying, Wherefore hast thou rent thy clothes? Let him come now to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel. He gonna know, because the man gonna be able to explain it to him. You know who the real prophets are in Israel, because they can explain it using 2 or 3 precepts. Not a bunch of old wives' tales and Jewish fables. Again, as we stated earlier, garments are doctrines. All right? Prophets with no understanding will lose faith in their own doctrines, and the righteous will teach the Gentiles. He's telling you what's happening now. That's what we're doing. Verse 9. So Naaman came with his horses and with his chariot. Chariot is a prophet, all right? A chariot is a prophet. Look at the precept down below. If you want to know what a chariot is, that's what a chariot is, okay? Stop believing in these UFOs. This man didn't show up with no UFO, all right? That man don't know what he's talking about. So Naaman came with his horses and with his chariot and stood at the door of the house of Elisha. Okay. When the Bible talking about a door, Elisha is the door. A door is the entrance into a house, which is a church. When you see words like door, window, or gate, it's talking about a prophet, right? That's how you get into a house, all right? So like they talk about the gates into the kingdom. The gates ain't an actual fenced area with an opening in it. A gate is a prophet. In order to get into the kingdom of heaven, you got to go through a prophet. The prophet got to teach you the doctrine that allows you to get in. Those men don't know that. They think it's talking about a physical gate, a barrier to prevent people from getting in and getting out. Those men have no understanding of the Bible. The gate is the prophet. All right. So now we're getting ready to show you what a door is. All right. We're going to John chapter 10, verse 7. Then said Jesus unto them again, Verily, verily, I say unto you, I am the door of the sheep. Christ is the door. He's a prophet. All right. And all that ever came before me are thieves and robbers. All right. So he's saying the prophets that came before him were thieves and robbers. But the sheep did not hear them. All All right, so he's talking about now. He's comparing the people with his doctrine versus the people you've been listening to. Then he says again, verse 9, I am the door. By me, if any man enter in, if he get in the kingdom of heaven, he got to go through Christ. He shall be saved and shall go in and out and find pasture. So he's going to find that doctrine, that kingdom of heaven. All right. So when you see the word door, it's talking about a prophet. Let's get another one. We're going to go to Revelation chapter 4, verse 1. After this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven. And the first verse which I heard was as it were a trumpet talking with me, which said, Come up hither, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter. So that door is talking. That's a prophet. He telling him, come up here. He's talking about come up to Jerusalem. All right. So he's trying to explain him. He's trying to get him to see something spiritual. That's what the end story of it is. But that door is speaking like a trumpet. All right. Let's get one more. Acts chapter 14, verse 27. And when they were come and had gathered the church together, they rehearsed all that God had done with them, and how he had opened the door of faith unto the Gentile. So the door of faith is what they taught them. They're the teachers. All right. He's talking about the prophets. All right. So he opened the door of faith to the Gentile. They taught them the doctrine of faith. Faith is a spiritual doctrine. So let's go back to 2 Kings 5, verse 10. And Elisha sent a messenger unto him, saying, Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times. So he's telling this man to go and wash in the Jordan River. So he's calling the river Jordan. All right. And thy flesh shall come again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. All right. He's telling him how to heal himself. So the Most High just called Jordan a river. Water is a doctrine. We said that before, Ephesians 5:26. The Jordan River is a doctrine. All right. When the Bible's talking about the Jordan River, it's talking about a doctrine. That was the last thing taught when they came out of that wilderness. 40 years, 40 doctrines. And then they crossed that Jordan River, that final lesson that they got. All right. 7 is a number of completion. He told him to get in that water 7 times, right? So he's telling them, learn that doctrine, get complete understanding of the doctrine. 7, Genesis 2 and 2 tell you what 7 is. Flesh is wisdom and knowledge. You can go to John. Matter of fact, let's just go there. So you can understand the flesh that he said was going to come back to itself once he dipped himself in that Jordan River. John chapter 6, verse 51. I am the living bread which came down from heaven. This is Christ talking. He said he's the bread. If any man eat this bread, bread is his doctrine. He shall live forever. He ain't talking about eating his flesh, his actual bread. The bread that I will give is my flesh. So he comparing the bread to his flesh. He's telling you bread and flesh mean the same thing, which I will give for the life of the world. So he's telling you the flesh is his understanding. The Jews therefore strove among themselves, saying, how can this man give us his flesh to eat? Because they carnal. They read everything carnally. Just like them people was stupid back in the day, that's how they are today. They believe carnal stuff over spiritual stuff. They don't have the capacity to learn what that stuff means spiritually. Then Jesus said unto them, verily, verily, I say unto you, except ye eat the flesh, understanding his doctrine, of the Son of Man and drink his blood, which is also his doctrine, ye have no life in you. That's what he's saying. For whoso eateth my flesh, my doctrine, and drinketh my blood, learn my doctrine, hath eternal life, and I will raise him in the last day. He's telling you, if you learn that doctrine, you're going to get the kingdom. For my flesh, understanding, is meat. Flesh and meat mean the same thing. Indeed. So he's saying, I got my flesh is understanding, and my blood is drink indeed. So his blood is understanding, wisdom. He that eateth my flesh and drinketh my blood dwelleth in me, and I in him. So if you got his understanding, you represent him on the earth in this day and age, because you got his doctrine. If you got the doctrine, you are Christ. That's what he's telling. All right. So the Most High is telling NAAMAN to get complete understanding of the doctrine of the Jordan River to heal his leprosy, right? His incorrect doctrine. Jordan, the land, and Jordan, the river, are both doctrines. So when you see in the Bible something talking about Jordan, it's talking about a doctrine. Y'all got that? So we're going to go to 2 Kings 5 and 11. And it says, but Naaman was wroth, that means he was mad, and went away and said, behold, I thought he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and strike his hand over the place and recover the leper. So he's sitting there thinking that Elisha was going to jump through a bunch of hoops and do a bunch of magic and puffs of smoke and all that other stuff to make the people think that he actually got some power, right? And he's telling you what's going to happen today. The people are going to realize how easy it is to get salvation. They're going to say, no, it's too good to be true. You mean to tell me that's all it is? You're going to literally be thinking to yourself, it's got to be more to it than this. But it's just that simple. You got to purge yourself of all of that foolishness and learn what Christ said you have to do. It ain't hard, right? So it's saying the Gentiles in this day are going to be angry because they won't believe how simple salvation is. After they have been lied to for so many years, they're going to be saying it can't be that easy. That's what everybody's going to be saying. But they're going to find out it actually is. So we're going to give you some examples here. We're going to go to Matthew. Chapter 11. We're going to start at verse 28. This is something that Christ said. It's a prophecy so that you can be comforted. It says, come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavily laden. You heavily laden with them doctrines that you learned from all of them liars that you've been listening to. And I will give you rest. Rest means belief. Full understanding. That's rest. The Most High rested on the seventh day. That's the seventh level of understanding. That's when you have rest. Take my yoke upon you. Yoke is doctrine. Yoke is his doctrine. So he's saying, if you go to Ephesians 3 and 1, Paul says he's a prisoner of God. He says the same thing again in Ephesians 4 and 1. He's a prisoner of Christ. All right? That's what he's saying. So that's the yoke that he's talking about, that doctrine. He believes in Christ's doctrine. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me. He's saying you got to learn the doctrine. For I am meek and lowly in heart. He's telling you it's not something difficult and hard and complicated like all of those different biblical courses and all that stuff that they teaching you. You got to know this and this, and the thing that the thing that he's presented to us is very simple to learn. All right. He says, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your soul. You're going to believe. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. He's telling you it's really easy to learn his doctrine. That's what he's telling you. If you commit the time to learn the doctrine, it's gonna come to you rather easy. All right. So you see, we do it on the fly now. We understand what it's saying. And you can do the same thing if you sit and you study and learn what these words mean. He also said it in 1 John 5, verse 3. For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous. It's letting you know it's not hard to learn the doctrine. It's not hard to learn the doctrine. It's not grievous. But it's also saying you don't have to go out there doing those Feast of Tabernacles and Pentecost and Passover and all that stuff, spending all that money and going through all those hoops. Well, you know, we got the Feast of Weeks coming, so we better go and take all of the leaven out of our pantries. Now, you done spent all that money. Now you got to throw away good food for nothing. When leaven, he talking about the leaven of them Pharisees, them lies that they telling in their doctrine. That's the leaven. He said he want unleavened bread. We just showed you bread mean understanding, wisdom. Unleavened bread mean it ain't got all them lies like those Pharisees be teaching. Y'all get it? So let's get back to the story. Verse 12. So this is after ELISHA told him to go and dip 7 times in that Jordan River. NAAMAN says, are not Abana and Pharpar, rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? May I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. And his servant came near and spake unto him and said, my father, if the prophet had bid thee do some great thing, wouldst thou not have done it? How much rather then when he said to thee, wash and be clean? So what that's telling you, when the people start hearing how easy it is to get salvation, they're going to be insulted. And when he's talking about all of those different rivers that they got in Syria and all that other stuff, he's talking about his doctrine. All right. So he's basically telling you, the people that hear the doctrine, they're going to compare the doctrine that we are giving them, Christ's doctrine, to what they've already learned. And they're going to think that the doctrine that they've learned is superior to the doctrine that we're teaching, at least initially. Then they're going to, at the end, relent, and they're going to say, well, let me just give it a try and not throw it out of hand, right? And they're going to go ahead and start practicing it, and then they're going to see the power of it. But initially, they're not going to be impressed with it. Initially. A lot of people going to sit there and they're going to say, man, that thing too easy. It can't be that simple. Seriously. Verse 13. Excuse me. Verse 14. So then it says, NAAMAN, then went he down and dipped himself 7 times in Jordan. So he learned the Jordan doctrine. All right, he telling you, he learned the doctrine according to the sayings of the man of God. So he doing what the prophet told him to do. That's what y'all gonna do. And his flesh came again like unto the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. So you all are going, as you begin to understand and practice in the spiritual doctrine, is going to clean you of the filth of those old doctrines that you've been following. You're going to end up purging those old doctrines. That's it. That is how you kill the old man. You kill the old man by rejecting the carnal doctrines that you learn and adopting the new spiritual doctrine. That's when you convert and you are born again as the new spiritual man. That's how the Most High explains it. All right. So people will begin to learn the new doctrine and will begin to see the righteousness in the doctrine, and their belief in other doctrines will end. They will have killed the old man and will raise up as a new creature following the doctrine of Christ. All right. So if you go to Numbers 33, it tells you, it gives you an example of how a person gets understanding. And pay attention to this slide, because it's an outline of how a person gets understanding, right? So it says, you know by now that years and months and weeks and days, they mean level of understanding. They're not talking about necessarily 365 days in a year. The Most High doesn't see time the way you see time. The book says that Moses and the children of Israel were in the wilderness for 40 years. But that doesn't mean they were actually out there 40 years. It's telling you when they got through, they had the equivalent of 40 years of understanding. For 40 years in the wilderness, the people were being taught. That is what the manna and the watering places were in the wilderness. All right. So we're going to end up explaining to you what evening, morning, and day mean. All right. There are over 40 cities in the wilderness. If you go to Numbers 33, just count them up. You'll see how the Most High is talking about them 40 years, them 40 lessons that he taught them. And there's over 40 cities that the children of Israel go to during the time in the wilderness. Those are lessons, doctrines that Moses taught in the wilderness. The Most High calls the doctrines by his name. So wherever the city was that they went to out there in the wilderness, that's what the Most High called the lesson that Moses taught. That's how he numbered Israel. Number means to teach or learn a doctrine, okay? So that's what all that stuff means. All right? We're going to explain that stuff to you whenever we finish with this. This is the last couple of scriptures on this story, because now you're starting to see that when it starts talking about these different names, it's talking about doctrines. So we're going to finish it out here with verse 15 and 16. But he returned to the man of God. And he returned to the man of God, he and all his company, and came and stood before him and said, Behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. So the people, once they get this understanding, they're going to believe. It's talking about now. Those people are going to believe. They're going to believe in the doctrine. Now, therefore, I pray thee, take a blessing of thy servant. But he said, As the Lord liveth, before whom I stand, I will receive none. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. Now, this is a thing about when you learn this information that the Most High wants you to know. Your biggest weakness is going to be the fact that you know something. And the problem is that being that you know something, sometimes people become overconfident in their understanding, right? But they know enough just to get in trouble. So once you learn something, a lot of times people start creating doctrines, and they won't go to the people who taught them and try and get full understanding, but they'll push their own doctrine. And that's the thing that the prophets have to be leery of. All right. So you can't go and teach somebody something and then just let them come and just run wild. They still have to go through the process of scrutinizing the doctrine so that they can tell the people the right stuff. You need to be under the tutelage of senior elders to help you along your path. That don't mean you have to be their slave and you got to give them a bunch of money and all of that stuff. But you need, when you got questions, you need to ask questions from the elders. All right. So the Gentiles are going to want to pay the prophets for their services and want to make them renowned. But the prophets ain't going to take the money. The money is talking about is not physical money. It ain't talking about physical money. It's talking about, when the Most High talks about money, he talking about men with doctrines. He see a man like a wedge of gold of Ophir. So he talking about men with doctrine. That's the money. The money is the man's understanding of the doctrine. All right. When he started talking about silver and gold, he's breaking it down based upon the value of the metal. So gold is more precious than silver. Silver is more precious than brass. Brass more precious than iron. You kind of get it? So he's letting you know that the money that he's talking about, that he won't take the understanding that new prophet is presenting. Okay, he's got some understanding, but he needs to learn more. So it's not talking about money, physical money. All right, it's talking about your level of understanding. All right, y'all got that? So now this Numbers 33. If you look at this slide I got up here, it'll show you. If you look up, you'll see how the Most High got it broken down. But let's read these first verses in Numbers 33 so you can get a better understanding of what it's talking about. Because this is how the Most High teaches the people. He gets the prophet to teach the people in a specific way. Numbers 33, verse 1. These are the journeys of the children of Israel, which went forth out of the land of Egypt, with their armies under the hand of Moses and Aaron. So they came out of the land of Egypt with their armies under the hand of Moses and Aaron. A hand is a doctrine, okay? The land of Egypt. Now you know when you see Egypt, the first thing that should come to your mind is doctrine. They came out of the land of Egypt. Egypt is a land. That's a doctrine. And Moses wrote their goings out according to their journeys by the commandment of the Lord. And these are their journeys according to their goings out. And they departed from Rameses. Rameses is a city. That's a doctrine. All right, so they leave in Rameses in the first month on the 15th day of the first month. On the morrow after the Passover, the children of Israel went out with a high hand in the sight of all the Egyptians. All right, so he's telling you that the children of Israel left Egypt. He's talking about they were taught. All right, he's saying that they were taught. All right. And then it says, for the Egyptians buried all their firstborn, which the Lord had smitten among them. Upon their gods also the Lord executed judgments. And the children of Israel removed from Rameses, that's the doctrine of Egypt that they're leaving, and pitched in Succoth. That's where they started their new understanding. All right. So there's a couple of things we need to go and give you when it's talking about them leaving Egypt, right? There's a scripture. Me and Elder Johanna was talking about it. And this scripture describes these people. And it's in Psalms. Psalms 147. 19. This is how that passage that we just read, talking about how they came out of Egypt. And the Egyptians are the people who have the carnal doctrine. That's Jacob versus Israel. Jacob is the Egyptian and Israel is the spiritual. All right? Because Egypt is a carnal doctrine. It's talking about now. It's talking about now. I'm going to read this scripture that they always read. It's Psalms 147 and 19. He showeth his word unto Jacob. Jacob are those Egyptians that was watching the children of Israel leave. His statutes and his judgments to Israel. Okay, that's whenever they left that carnal doctrine and they were on their way to succor. They're getting ready to start learning the spiritual doctrine. Right? Because it said, he has not dealt so with any nation, and as for their judgment, they have not known them. So those people don't have the proper judgment of the spiritual understanding. They got the carnal judgment that the Most High is not accepting anymore. So that story about the children of Israel leaving out of Egypt is happening now as the people are starting to learn the spiritual doctrine. That's the similitude of that parable that we read just now. So if you want to know what Egypt is, you can go to Exodus 20 and 2, and it lets you know Egypt is the doctrine of captivity. All right, Egypt is the name of a doctrine the children of Israel were following. All right. Again, Jeremiah 3, 1 and 2 tells the land is a woman, the land of Egypt, the doctrine of Egypt. That's what it's saying. All right. So he used the word hands. It said that under the hand of Moses. Right. So if you want to know what the hands are, you can go to 1 Timothy 4 and 13. You can go to Acts 9 and 17, hands of doctrines. Israel left the belief in the carnal doctrine and began following Moses' doctrine. That's whenever it said left out under Moses' hand. Moses made a record of all that Moses made a record for all us to follow by the order of the Most High. All right, that's what he's saying, right? So now let's explain these dates. Right. So, verse 3, it says they departed out of Rameses. Rameses is a city in Egypt, a carnal doctrine, right? So they've departed out of the carnal doctrine, right? In the first month is Abib. I can't remember if it's in Exodus 12 or Exodus 13. They say the beginning of months is Abib, right? So it says in the first month, which is Abib, when the people first decided to leave the carnal doctrine. That's what it's talking about. All right, they're going to start learning something. It says in the 15th day, that's halfway through the course of Abib. The name of the course is called Abib, right? When you see names, it's the name of doctrine. This is how Moses is teaching them. So it took them 15 days to get halfway through the course. Right, on a bead that Moses and Aaron taught. On the morrow, that's the next morning, right? They started learning something new after they learned the understanding of Passover. Okay, so they went through the process of learning Passover. They left in a high hand. They left with a high hand, meaning they had a superior doctrine. Their hand was higher than the Egyptian hand. Hand means doctrine. It's a member. All the members are doctrine, right? Whether it's the foot, the hand, the head, the arm, wings, whatever. Members are doctrine. It said they left with a high hand or a superior doctrine that they had confidence in. And the Egyptian carnal believers watched in awe of them. That's why I read Psalm, because it's telling you those people are going to be in awe whenever they start seeing all of the doctrines that these people are going to have whenever they start getting a righteous doctrine. They're going to be jealous of them. They're going to be in awe. I'm going to read it again. Psalms 149 and Psalms 147, 19. He showeth his word to Jacob. He showed it to them, right? But they rejected it. They're the Egyptians that he's talking about. His statutes and his judgments to Israel. The statutes and the judgments, that's the high hand that they got. Y'all see that? They left with a high hand, meaning they got the spiritual doctrine that Moses gave them. That's the high hand. People sitting there watching them, as that's what's happening now. These people in these carnal camps are looking and seeing. They saying that doctrine better than the one that we have. Right? That's what's happening now. He have not dealt so with any nation. Right? So Jacob and Israel is the nation that he's dealt with. All right. As for his judgment, they have not known them. So they don't know the judgment. They don't know the new spiritual doctrine. So all of those people who don't know the spiritual doctrine, they're going to have to learn the spiritual doctrine and convert, or they're not going to get the kingdom. Whether they be Jacob or whether they be the other nation, it doesn't matter. They still have to convert to the spiritual doctrine. All right. So now in that verse 4, it says, the Egyptians buried their firstborn. All right. So it's letting you know the firstborn, they died. When it says to die, that's Romans 6 and 6. It means they converted. Okay. So they sat there and watched as those men, those people converted, left Egypt as well. All right. That's what's going to happen here real soon, because a lot of these leaders in these carnal churches, they're going to see the value of this spiritual doctrine, and they're going to convert. All right. And their gods were also judged by the Most High. The people lost faith in their doctrine. That's what it's talking about. All right. When it's talking about the Most High judged their gods, a god ain't a statue. A god is a man with a doctrine. Okay. So their gods are those men with doctrines. They're going to lose faith in those men's doctrine. That's what the Most High talking about. When it was Most High talking about gods and images and all that stuff, he ain't talking about a statue. He ain't talking about a painting. That's inanimate object. Ain't no value in no painting or a statue that can change your life. And the statue, they don't have any power. It's just an idol. So he ain't talking about that. He talking about an actual living statue, a living painting, a living image, which is a man with a doctrine. That's what you need to watch out for. Okay, verse 5, he said they left Rameses and began a new lesson called Succor. That's what that's saying. They left out of Rameses. Rameses is a city in Egypt. That's a doctrine. So they left out of the doctrine of Rameses, and then they ended up in the doctrine of Succor. That's what the Most High called the doctrine. It says Moses and Aaron are teaching Israel new doctrines that the Most High is calling after cities. Okay. He is using the dates to section off the portion of the lesson. So like whenever he said on the first month, the 15th day, he just sectioning off the lesson. That's the different courses along the lesson. That's all he doing. All right. So the Most High shows you how he does that in Genesis 1. So whenever you go to Genesis 1, right, we're going to start at Genesis 1 and 1, right? And I'm going to break it down a little bit how the Most High goes about explaining himself, right? Now, most of y'all don't understand how this is done, and whenever we get through, it's going to make sense to you, All right. So we're going to read Genesis 1:1, right? Now, what you're going to learn is those days, those 7 days, correlate with numbers in the Bible. So when it started talking about 40 weeks or 400 years of slavery, there's a correlation with the 4th day that's mentioned in chapter 1. All right. If it's talking about 70 years that Israel went into captivity, well, it's talking about complete understanding of that other doctrine and complete ignorance of the Most High's doctrine. That's what he's telling you. All right. So you got to understand that those 7 days correlate with other numbers in the Bible. All right. Verse 5. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Now that little bit of that little sentence at the end, and the evening and the morning were the first day. There's a whole lot to that little sentence, right? And we're getting ready to explain it to you right now. All right, we're gonna put this slide up here. All right. Now, if you look at this slide, you see there's a dark spot all the way to your far left. There's a black square, right? That represents the evening, right? The evening is whenever you are about to, let's say you're getting ready to learn about how to observe the Passover, as that's the example that we have. Before we start learning anything about the Passover, you're in the evening, meaning you're in ignorance of the subject, right? The moment we start teaching about the Passover, you go into the morning. Morning means the beginning of learning a subject. That's what morning means. Morning is light. When you get the first beginning understanding of a subject. We're using Passover as an example. Now, after you learn about the subject of Passover, you reach the day, which is the end of your learning of the subject. All right? So after you got the day, that means you got full understanding of that particular subject. Then you go back into evening before you learn your next course. We got up here, your next course would be how to observe the Feast of Tabernacle. So after you've learned the Passover, you go into your evening phase again, right? So you have no understanding of tabernacles at all. Then when we start teaching about tabernacles, now you're in the morning phase of your learning, where you begin learning the subject of the Feast of Tabernacles. After you get a full understanding of the Feast of Tabernacle, you reach the day portion of your lesson, right? Which is the end of learning that subject. After you got understanding of that subject, you go back into the evening, meaning you're in ignorance until the next subject comes to be taught. That's what the evening and the morning mean. The evening, ignorance, and the morning, I started learning something, was the first day. Okay, I got complete understanding of that. Now I'm ignorant again of the next lesson that's getting ready to come. Morning, we start teaching about the next lesson. Day, I got full understanding of that lesson. So now I'm going back into the evening until the next lesson comes, and over again. That's how the Most High teaches you. When you see that in the Bible talking about evening and the morning, that's this process right here. That's what that's talking about. All right. So now we're going to give you some understanding of Isaiah 17, because it's talking about Damascus. All right. So this is another way where you can see, because Damascus is a doctrine. He's telling you what's going to happen. He's telling you what's happening right now. After we finish this, you're going to understand what it was talking about whenever it was talking about Paul going up to Damascus. You're going to understand it. All right? So now let's read it. Isaiah 17, verse 1. The burden of Damascus. Behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it shall be a ruinous heap. The cities of Aror are forsaken. They shall be for flocks, which shall lie down, and none shall make them afraid. The fortress also shall cease from Ephraim, and the kingdom from Damascus, and the remnant of Syria. They shall be as the glory of the children of Israel, saith the Lord. So now they sitting there, they saying, it's talking about a bunch of planes and stuff gonna start dropping bombs on Syria and all that other stuff, but that ain't what it's talking about. All right, it's talking about something way more deeper than what's being taught, right? But now you should have a better understanding of what it's talking about. But I'm gonna break it down for you. The Most High is prophesying of the overthrow of carnal doctrines that have his people in bondage. They are the flocks that will lie down and not be afraid. Because right now they under the doctrine of Damascus, which is a carnal doctrine. All right. This is not talking about the war in Syria today. This is a carnal belief that you can't receive salvation from knowing. Syria is being blown up today. You can, however, receive salvation understanding the carnal doctrine of Damascus will be replaced with the righteous. So let's go back and read it again. The burden of Damascus. Burden is a doctrine, right? Of Damascus. Damascus is the name of the doctrine it's talking about. Behold, Damascus is taken away. So it's saying that he's going to replace that doctrine from being a city. People are not going to follow that doctrine anymore. And it shall be a ruinous heap. All right. The cities, doctrines of Aurora, that's the name of the doctrine, are forsaken. So people ain't going to believe that doctrine no more. They shall be for flocks, which shall lie down, and none shall make them afraid. So he's saying the flocks are going to be in those doctrines after they get corrected. The Most High is going to correct those doctrines with the doctrine Jerusalem, which is the doctrine Christ left us. The fortress also shall cease from Ephraim, and the kingdom from Damascus. So he's telling it's going to be replaced. And the remnant of Syria, they shall be as the glory. Glory is the doctrine of the children of Israel, saith the Lord of hosts. So he's telling you he's going to replace that doctrine with the doctrine of the children of Israel, which is the spiritual doctrine. All right. So if you want to know what glory means, Revelations 21, 22 through 26, 2 Peter 3:18, knowledge of the glory of Christ's glory. The glory means wisdom. Okay, glory means wisdom and understanding. Matthew 17, 1 and 2, Christ's face is in the light, so that's wisdom. So that means light is wisdom. So glory is wisdom. The Most High will convert the people from understanding of those carnal doctrines to the glory of his doctrine. All right? So he's going to convert the people. Isaiah 17, verse 4. In that day it shall come to pass that the glory of Jacob, the doctrine of Jacob, shall be made thin. So people ain't going to have no understanding. Remember we read that about the sun was going to go down on the prophets. He's telling you that's what's happening now. These people don't have any understanding. And the fatness of his flesh shall wax lean. They're not going to have flesh. Remember we read in John 6, flesh is understanding, wisdom. They ain't going to have any understanding. It's saying the same thing as Micah 3 said. And it shall be as when the harvestman gathers the corn and reapeth the ears with his arms. And it shall be as he that gathereth ears in the valley of Rephaim. All right. Yet the gleaning grapes shall be, yet gleaning grapes shall be left in it. So it's going to be a few people that's going to have understanding. All right. As the shaking of an olive tree, 2 or 3 berries in the top of the utmost bough, 4 or 5 in the outmost fruitful branches thereof, saith the Lord God of Israel. So he's telling you it's going to be 2 or 3 people who are going to be left with understanding, right? And they're going to be high up in the tree, meaning they're going to have a lot of understanding, all right? So the Most High is saying the doctrine of Jacob will be known by very few people. People will want understanding, and it will be hard to come by. All right. Now let's read verse 7. At that day shall man look to his maker, and his eyes shall have respect for the Holy One of Israel. So people going to start learning the doctrine. And he shall not look to the altars, the works of his hand, neither shall respect that which his fingers have made, either the groves or the images. So he's saying in this day the people are going to turn their back on them carnal doctrines that they learn from these wicked men. In that day shall his strong cities be as a forsaken bough, and the utmost branch which they left because of the children of Israel, and there shall be desolation. So he's telling you the doctrine of these wicked men are going to be replaced. You're starting to see people are starting to lose faith in those doctrines that these men are teaching. They can see the foolishness of it. The people will begin to look for true understanding, will find the true doctrine. They will reject false altars and groves and images, false doctrines and false prophets. Okay. The strong cities, which is the churches of the false prophets, will be as a forsaken bough. So you're telling me people ain't gonna believe in them no more. Member for a tree. All right, that's what a bough is. That's a branch. Okay, it's a member. So member is a doctrine. It said that the bough that will be left because the righteous will teach them. All right, so they're going to be converting. Once the people hear the true doctrine, those churches will be desolate. That's the strong cities he's talking about. Okay. Verse 10. Because thou hast forgotten the God of thy salvation, and hast not been mindful of the rock, that's Christ, for thy strength, therefore shalt thou plant pleasant plants, and shalt set it with strange slips. So now when you start talking about slips, if anybody ever planted potatoes, they say potato slips. All right, what it is a cutting of a vine, right? You cut that vine, but you stick that thing in the ground, that vine gonna grow. All right, so that's what talking about. They got strange slips. That means it's talking about their doctrines. Okay, they're gonna have strange slips. It's talking about their doctrines, right? Verse 11. In the day shalt thou make thy plant grow, and in the morning shalt thou make thy seed flourish. Seed is the word. So it's talking about initially they're going to be successful in spreading them lies that they taken, that they teach. But the harvest shall be a heap in the day of grief and of desperate sorrow. So he's telling you the time's coming where people ain't going to believe that foolishness no more. They're going to start converting to what Christ told them to do. And then it says, woe to the multitude of people which make a noise like the noise of seas, and a rushing of nations that make a rushing like the rushing of mighty waters. So he's telling these people are going to be destroyed because they faked the funk. They told the people to follow their doctrine and they would get salvation. Now they're being found out to be frauds. Okay? Verse 13, the nations shall rush like the waters, like the rushing of many waters. So he's saying those congregations with them wicked doctrines, they're going to be rushing. They're going to be making a lot of noise in the last days, as you see they're doing now. But God shall rebuke them, and they shall flee far off, and shall be chased as the chaff of the mountains before the wind, and like a rolling thing before the whirlwind. They're going to be getting up out of there like tumbleweeds. They're going to be trying to get away from this doctrine because it's going to be correcting them. It's going to make them look foolish. They're going to be humiliated because of all those lies that they told. And behold, evening tide. Again, evening, that means they ain't got no understanding. We just explained how the situation was. They're not going to have the doctrine. They're going to be an evening tide, right? Well, the other people, they're going to have the morning, the evening and the morning and the first day. They're going to have complete understanding. These people ain't going to have no understanding. So it says, and behold, at evening tide, trouble. And before morning, he is not. He ain't going to get the understanding. This is the portion of them that spoil us, and a lot of them that rob us. The Most High say he going to punish the men for what they did. They're going to get punished because they didn't teach the people. That's what's going to happen to them for not doing their job. The Most High is promising that he's going to destroy those men. Okay. Why must we know about Damascus? We have learned that the Most High calls doctrines by the name of cities. If we didn't know that, we would be looking at the destruction of Syria, wondering why nothing has happened, and lose faith in what the Bible is saying. Now you know the Most High is speaking about doctrines, and you now realize that when Paul was on his way to Damascus, he was going to learn a new doctrine after being promoted for killing Stephen. He saw or understood the doctrine of Christ while he was persecuting the disciples. So while he was trying to figure out this doctrine that everybody was converting to, he ended up getting bit. And he started believing in that doctrine. That's what happened to Paul. So in studying to fight the doctrine, he was converted and no longer believed in the carnal doctrine. He fasted from learning the Damascus doctrine 3 days without sight. Neither did he eat. Go back and read that story about Paul going to Damascus. Paul is not physically blind, but spiritually blind. Okay? Don't believe those Jewish fables. When the Most High talking about blind, he mean you ignorant, dark, evening, shadow, blind, night. All those things mean the same thing. He didn't have any understanding until the Most High sent that prophet to put his hands on his eyes. And when he put his hands, them scales started coming out, meaning he ended up teaching Paul the doctrine, and Paul understood it. Y'all see that? Paul is not physically blind, but spiritually blind. All right? Maybe we'll teach that class soon, because you're probably intrigued by now. But it's important that you know, if you understand what these cities mean, then you have the ability to look and see that the Most High is talking about doctrines in the latter days. And if you are able to learn the righteous doctrine, right, you can go and you can kill the old man in you and purge yourself of those wicked doctrines, right? So he's just telling you, it's our job to teach you so that we can explain to you, so that when you see those words, those names, always associate names with doctrines. All right. I hope you have enjoyed this class. And with that, I bid you shalom.